What is the scariest thing you've ever seen while driving at night? A lot of people that drive for a living or have done balls-to-the-wall cross-country drives can tell you about the running shadows. First time I saw them I was on the tail end of 12 straight hours of driving. I was driving through the middle of nowhere, in the desert, at night. Very little light from the sky, no man-made lights even on the horizon. Just the pitiful cone from my truck's headlamp, and being in the middle of the desert it pretty much only lights up the road ahead. Nothing above ground level to catch the light. As I'm barreling along, I start to see shadowy figures running alongside my truck out of the corners of my eyes, on two legs and four. All I can think about is the creepy stories you read online about crap that lives out in the desert, or the Asian ghost stories where if you don't acknowledge the spirit it can't harm you. So, I've got my eyes glued to the road, refusing to let them flicker off to the side. I rolled my windows up and cranked up the volume on my radio. Drove like that for probably an hour and a half until they slowly petered out roughly 15 minutes outside of a little one-light town. I've had people try to carjack me, people try to rob me after I pull over to render aid, people jump out at me on twisty mountain road, you name it. But nothing matching that level of fear the first time I saw them. Felt like my spine was rippling like a ribbon in the wind trying to jump clear out of my back and hide under the seat. Sleep deprivation mixed with sensory deprivation does some strange things. Was on I-70 in Colorado going towards Utah, pulled over at a gas station at 8 p.m. Fueling up I noticed a couple of attractive women pumping gas. On the other side of the pump was the man in his late 40s. Just staring at these young women without notice of anything else going on around him. I walk inside to go grab some food for the next few hours of driving. When I come out, I see both the younger woman's car and the older man's truck are gone. I decided to hang out at the gas station for the next hour to catch a little sleep before hitting the road again. After driving for a few hours, I was speeding heavy. I pull over at yet another gas station. The young women are there getting gas and eating some food on a picnic table. Looked like they had been there for a while. I didn't see any sign or the man in the truck, but can't say I was looking very hard for it. Well, here is where it got creepy as hell. Can't say I didn't stare at them a bit, I mean they were good-looking women. As I am watching them leave, I see in the next parking lot over some headlights turn on, and it's the same man as before he leaves when the women leave once again. Okay, that's a bit weird, but could just be a coincidence as there weren't many places to pull over. I leave a few minutes later and catch up to them. Now this guy is riding their ass with his high beams on. I decided to slow down and stay a distance behind the truck. 10 minutes or so later the women pull over once again to most likely get this guy off their ass with a sign of relief. The truck keeps going and I continue on my way. About 1 mile down the road the guy just pulls off to the side of the highway, so I pull off a mile or so down the road again. Sure enough the women drive by and the guy is still following them. At this point we are out in the middle of nowhere and too many coincidences have happened. I called the cops to alert them. In about 15 minutes the cops pulled the guy over. I could have just seen too many horror movies that started like this and overreacted, but you never know. Better safe than sorry. Not me but a friend. After dropping me off at my house around 2 a.m., my friend calls me and tells me to lock my doors. He said he saw a man standing in the middle of the road and that as he passed him the man kept staring through him. Not at him really, but like there was something behind him in his back seat. He also said he could barely make out anything about the man other than his large eyes and trench coat. What really terrified me is that this happened on a street that only my family lives on and no one would have been out that night. Also, we're a solid 1.5 miles from the nearest neighbor. Freaked me the hell out. Edit. Lock not pick. I used to deliver pizza, and often had deliveries right at midnight when we closed. One time, late at night, I'm driving back to the store through a small neighborhood. Up ahead I see something. It's perfectly spherical bright shiny thing, just hovering about 6 feet off the ground. Not moving at all. I pull up very slowly. Still doesn't move. Still can't comprehend what I'm looking at. Just this shiny hovering orb in the road at midnight. At this point my curiosity has overridden my fear. I'm the guy in the horror movie who dies first because I just gotta know. Either I die or I get a cool story, right? So, I hop out of the car, and slowly walk up to it. I'm right in front of it and still can't understand what I'm seeing. So, I reach out and touch it. It's a balloon. One of those foil birthday balloons with the streetlights shining on it, making it look weird out of context in the middle of the night on an empty road. Frogs. Hecking. Everywhere. Like hundreds of frogs all over the road. I drove taxi during the night shift, and among many crazy and terrifying things, I saw a toddler, 2-3 years. It was about 1 a.m. and I was driving in a very wooded part of our town, just after dropping a customer off, and in the middle of the road was this baby just sitting in the dark. I stopped my cab and turned on my flashers. I proceeded to walk up to the kid, and he just started bawling. I tried to comfort him, but me being in disbelief that a baby with no one around was just sitting there, all I could say was, it's cool bro. I picked him up and he started crying frantically. I would too if a stranger came and grabbed me. I put him in the passenger seat and looked for the nearest driveway. It ended up being about 100 yards down the street. I pulled up into what I hoped was his house, and there were maybe 6 or 7 teenagers drinking in the garage. I couldn't see from the road because all the houses had long dirt driveways. When I pulled up, they acted as if I wasn't even there until I said, "Hey, this your kid?" After a few whats, they came over to the cab and said, "Eden, where did you go?" Like the baby just goes for midnight strolls. Not a thank you or goodbye or anything, they just took the baby in the house and continued drinking and laughing. As I pulled out, I felt as if I should call the cops or something, but couldn't bring myself to do it. I'm still scared to this day that I'll be driving down a dark road and hit the baby. Scariest and funniest at the same time. I was working at a restaurant as a cook. We did full menu till 11 p.m., then apps and burgers till 1 a.m. I tended to pull the solo night shift, because I would walk out the door at 1:05 a.m. and the kitchen was stocked, clean, and perfect. It was a long night. Stupid folk kept sending back food orders after 1 a.m., I didn't leave till 2 a.m. 30-minute drive home, and I was exceptionally tired. I lived in the boonies of Wisconsin, at the time. A good 5 kilometers outside of town, which was 500 people, 2 churches, and 9 bars. I hit the little 24/7 truck stop just at the edge of the town for some munchies and smokes, and made the final trek home. Encountering deer was not uncommon out there, so I was going slow. When what appeared before me, to my tired eyes, was a monster. It had a huge, round body. This crazy long neck, a pointy head, and only 2 legs. Right in the middle of the road. Scared the ever-loving heck out of me in that state. Thankfully, it stood there for a second. Brain re-engaged. It's an ostrich. Okay, not a monster, yeah? Just an. What the heck is an ostrich doing wandering around in central Wisconsin? I looked at it, it looked at me. I blinked. Nope, still there. Pretty sure it's real. Finally, it trundled off into the forest. What? I grabbed my cell phone and called the tiny little police station in town, non-emergency number. So I'm really tired, so please laugh at me and tell me to go home and sleep and ignore the call, but I'm pretty sure I just saw an ostrich on Highway XX just outside Dollartown. She started laughing hysterically, then assured me that, no, I'm not hallucinating. There's an ostrich and emu farm on the other side of town, guy raises them for the kitsch places in town for meat. Some drunk driver felt that turns are for pussies, went up, over the berm, through the fence, and through most of the barn. There's still 4 animals, including the one I just spotted, unaccounted for. Where are you exactly, and which way did it go so we can round it up? I gave her the info, finished the last few miles home, and died in bed. Wild night, man. A dead, butchered horse laying in the road. Someone had completely skinned and butchered a horse, took the choice pieces of meat, and just dumped it on the highway. I almost crashed into it. 3 a.m. on a lonely road, and I was the passenger. An old man only wearing a bra, panties and high heels was casually walking down the road. My friend who was driving didn't believe me and went back around. Sure enough, he saw him, and we were like WTF. A lonely abandoned shack with a bunch of arrows pointing to it, saying come in. It To answer some questions, I was on my way to Texas to see family, and the GPS took us down a back road. My mom and I joked that it was a sex dungeon. This is a story about something that was really scary at the time, but kind of funny in retrospect. Once I was driving through an unfamiliar stretch of desert and mountains on my way to a campground in Utah. The sun had set and it was pitch black outside. We hadn't seen a town for a long time, which was fine because we didn't need fuel, but it's worth noting here that before it had gotten dark, the last several exits that had been marked on the map didn't appear to have any people at them. There weren't many other cars on the road that we could see, but eventually this vehicle came up behind me, clearly going much faster than I was. He passed me on the left, and as he went around me I could see that it was a pickup truck with a lift kit. The pickup got back into my lane in front of me. He stayed there for a few seconds, then suddenly swerved to the left and slammed on his brakes. He then cut back over into my lane, so he was behind me, and switched on his brights. He followed me like this for some time, getting right on my rear and flashing his brights repeatedly. I started getting nervous at this bizarre and aggressive behavior. I told my wife to help me find a populated exit. The road began to spiral down a steep mountainous slope. What followed next was a progression of increasingly alarming road signs that seemed like they belonged in a Looney Tunes cartoon, where a character is about to careen off a cliff. These signs said things like, "Watch for wildlife, frequent wildlife crossing next 20 miles, watch for ice, watch for falling rock," etc. None of them would have been scary on their own, or maybe in the daylight. But at night, in a situation where I was starting to panic, they seemed alarming, and it seemed like they were ridiculously increasing in severity. At one point, a sign popped up that said road damage. Since I was in panic mode, I remember exclaiming, "Why don't they just fix the damage instead of putting up a sign?" Eventually, we found a town with lots of lights, and I promptly exited. I was terrified the guy would follow us, but he went on past me. I pulled into a gas station, and that's when I figured what I probably should have realized a long time before. I had my brights on. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos. Also, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Got an even scarier story? Leave it in the comments below and you might get featured.